Everybody, welcome to this issue of Staffing Monthly. And I am really, really excited to have this guest on the show today. This is somebody that, in full transparency, I was not even aware of, 2 months ago. And I started seeing her content pop up on LinkedIn and was like, wow, this person really knows this industry really well. And I was sort of taken aback that I had not been introduced to her prior. And I started learning a little bit more about who she is, what she does, and I was just blown away. So I actually want to introduce you to Angela Cripps, but before I welcome her on, I just want to share with you some of the stats that just literally blew my mind. She's been doing this for, I'm not going to say how many years, but a while, okay? But in that time, she has focused on being a recruiter, learning in the trenches, and has personally recruited over 5,000 people, which is just mind-numbing to me. But evolved out of that to take what she learned to share it with other people. And over the past couple of decades, she's actually trained over 10,000 people, okay, over 250 companies in the staffing and recruiting industry that she's actually worked with to help them grow and get better. And her main focus at Recruiting Gym, which is her training company, is to help companies improve their people, which I love, and their processes, which I equally love. So I feel like this is a match made in heaven, a match made in heaven. And Angela, I just want to thank you for being here and welcome you to Staffing Monthly.
My pleasure. I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome. So the reason we're here is I couldn't quite decide which of your content I wanted to pick your brain on, and you were so gracious enough to offer enough time to tackle both recruiting and business development. So I want to start on the recruiting side because I still feel like that's kind of the big challenge that everyone's thinking about how to solve right now. You advise hundreds of companies. You train recruiters how to get better. What are you seeing out there right now, or what are you guiding them in as far as improving their recruitment right now with this sort of new normal in staffing and recruiting?
Is there really a new normal? Surely recruitment just keeps evolving constantly. Yeah, this is sort of a third of a century in now. So I think that's one of the things I love about our industry. We always embrace new things. We're always solution providers. We'll look at where the issues are, not just for our industry, but for every other industry as well. I think I've worked with over 50 different sectors, and we tend to have that approach. It's how can we make this industry better through recruiting the right people for companies? So if we go in with that sense of we're here to make a difference, we can make a difference to companies, to individuals, to their lives by putting them in the right places, then I think we're coming from a place of beneficial elements for everyone. I get really frustrated when recruiters are seen as you're just a recruiter. Hello, no. There's nothing in the sense of just a recruiter. A recruiter's job is probably 10 different jobs in one, which is why, unfortunately, for our industry as well, a lot of people don't realize that. So that would be my first point. We need a higher barrier to entry because, unfortunately, we're in a situation where people can join up, become a recruiter really easily. And actually, that's not a great thing because let's have a think. I had seven interviews for my role in recruitment, and yeah, 7 hours during that time to actually get to the point where I become a recruiter. They tried to put me off as much as possible. So I think from a best practice point of view, we need to make sure that people really do want the job. And the reason I'm pushing this, I've had experience this year with a lot of younger people joining the industry, thinking it's all a bed of roses, it's an easy job to do, and really not enjoying it. And it's actually affected their mental health as well, where they've really struggled. So I think it's important that we make sure when we're recruiting for ourselves, it's like sort of charity starts at home, really. Let's make sure that we're actually going to do a good job for ourselves so that the recruiters that we are putting out into the industries there and helping other companies, that they really do want to do the job and they are proud of what they do. That's the difference for me. If you're not proud of what you do, then unfortunately it's not going to come across and you're probably not going to do a great job for them either.
So that's fascinating, and there's actually a couple things I want to dig in there. But when you said that, having a sense of pride in your work, it actually reminds me of a not staffing in any way related story. But years and years and years ago, I wanted to get into real estate, right? I wanted to get into apartments and rentals and doing all the DIY work. And I didn't really know how to do any of that stuff. So I would actually hire contractors and I would ask them if they would basically just let me sort of apprentice with them while they were doing the job on the property so I could learn it. And there was this one particular plumber, which I actually hate plumbing. I learned that I'm just not going to do that. I'm not good at it. But this one plumber was helping me do a bathroom. I know this is so far off tangent. Like, where's this guy going? But there was this one closet in the laundry closet that we built out on this bathroom, and we were texturing the ceiling, and there was this part of the ceiling that was sort of behind where the washer and dryer was going to go, and I couldn't quite reach over there, and I just sort of did a halfway okay job. And I'm like, it's fine, no one's going to see it, it's behind the washer and dryer, it's not a big deal. And he just looked at me. This is an older kind of master, right? Like, he is just a true craftsman, master of his craft, great at all of his stuff building. And he was like, it's true. Nobody probably is going to see it. And if somebody does see it, they're probably not going to think much about a different texture or not a great quality job. But at the end of the day, you have to take pride in your work.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, and like, even though I got out of that, that's not my calling to be a builder or contractor in any way, shape, or form. But that lesson always stuck with me, is that you have to take pride in your work, and you have to know if you're doing work that you just don't want to take pride in, right? Like, so how do you sort that out? So if you're interviewing somebody, how do you actually find, because everyone's really good at interviewing these days for the most part. Like, so how do you really find that person that is going to take pride in their recruitment work?
That was a really sweeping statement that I'm not sure I actually agree with. That everyone's really good at interviewing these days. The fact that I've been asked to create a program of courses for hiring managers to help them with their interviewing skills. Maybe the
No,
recruiters
no, I mean candidates. Candidates, they've been through so many interviews.
ah,
Like, they're very good at like affronting, right? So like
that
when
makes
you're a
more sense.
recruiter, yeah, when you're a hiring manager and you're trying to find a recruiter for your agency that is
Yeah.
truly going to take pride in their work and they're going to want to become a master of their craft, how do you sort that out?
Yeah, yeah, no, you're right, because they know the score, they know the other side of it, they know what they're meant to be saying, and this is why you need to take time and not accept the first answer. It should be the way that you approach your interview for your clients and the detail that you go into and the checking and the double checking and the competency based questions and maybe a criterion referenced interview against a framework of competencies. So really delving deep and not accepting the first answer, not even the second, get a third version of what you're asking for. It's that when you know the person really knows what they're doing, when they can give you, yes, one example and then another example and a third one that's recent. Okay, now I accept that your competence in this level is what you're saying it is. Because otherwise, everyone's always thought of one answer for every type of competency they're likely to come up with. And there's about 12 or 13 for recruiters. So there's quite a lot that they've got to do. But they'll have an answer and it might not even be theirs. It'll be someone else that did it and they're just sharing it. So it's only through the probing questions, which is one of a recruiter's best friends, to be able to challenge that. And not in a negative way. I'm not challenging you. I'm not disagreeing with you. I want you to shine. That's the difference. I'm here to give you the opportunity to shine. So I'm going to ask you questions that will give you the opportunity to do that. And of course, if you can't do it, then at least we both know.
So so I love that. I love that you're talking about the importance of probing questions and kind of asking it in two or three different ways and not just settling for the first answer and really vetting a level of comprehension, of mastery, of true understanding. So this is what I want to do. And this is something that I don't think we've done in Staffing Monthly yet. But if you're not game, it's okay. We'll just edit this out. But if you are game, I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Okay.
Would you be okay just jumping into a role play? You be the interviewer, I'll be the interviewee, and just pretend you're recruiting me, or like for a recruiting role. And let's just go through a mini piece of the interview, not the entire thing, but just show me an example of like how you might use probing questions, one, two, or three, sort of stacked to get a level. And then you can tell me honestly if you think that I've demonstrated a level of mastery at recruiting. And if I've not, then it's okay. You can tell me that.
Okay. I was originally going to go with targets when you said that, but actually, the top competency for the top consultants from the research that's been done, sort of billing, top billing consultants, that's like £1 million plus, is planning. Planning is the top competency. So let's dive into that one. So, first and foremost, then, Daniel, tell me about the types of planning that you would do on a weekly basis for your position.
So that's a great question. I'm actually a planner. I actually use two types of planning to kind of bring my system together. One, I don't want to say I live and die by my Google Calendar, but that really is my go-to. I make sure that I use time blocking for all of my key things. And there was a technique that I learned years ago that has served me really well, because I used to, when I would get involved in my planning, I would find myself overcommitting myself and then ending up to do things halfway. And I didn't like that. And I learned this technique that has allowed me to be much more proficient and pour more of myself in the tasks that matter. And it's actually called the 60-40 planning method, where I'll actually fill up my calendar only about 60%, and I'll leave about 40% white space on my calendar. And that lets me, catch the things that sort of come up or fill in, or meetings that go long, or travel time, or all that kind of stuff. So it helps me be a little bit more effective with my planning and using time blocking. The other method that I use, complementary to that, is if I'm going through a season where it's very task oriented. Sometimes we go through the seasons where we just got to get through a task list. I actually use a productivity planner that's based on the Pomodoro technique, where I'll actually just list out my highest priorities that I need to get through, kind of the number one thing that if I accomplished it today, it would be a victory. And then kind of the tier of the next three, and then the five below that. And then I just focus top to bottom. I plan out how long I think those tasks are going to take. I allocate time, and then I use a Pomodoro technique where I'll focus 25 minutes of just dedicated focus, not multitasking, but just single tasking, in that one area. And then once 25 minutes is up, I'll take a light break, get up, walk around, grab a glass of water, cup of coffee, whatever it might be. And then I'll jump right back into another one. And I'll usually stay on task like that for like 3 or 4 Pomodoros. And then after that, like I find myself needing to move to a different type of task, just to stay, I guess, effective. And that's really how I approach my week. And I usually set my weeks up at the end of the prior week. So as I close out a Friday, I'll take inventory on what I accomplished, how effective I was, take some lessons learned, and then I'll plan out the next week. And that's how I approach planning.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. So, what about when you're planning and including someone else in the plan? How would you approach that?
Okay, so it's a good question. Help me understand. So, including someone else, in what
So, it's
capacity?
not down to you. There needs to be at least two or possibly three people to get this task done. So, how are you going to make sure that they're going to be as good as what you've just said?
Are we working together at the same time, or basically working in parallel during the same week, and then we're recapping at the end of the week to make sure that we all got our stuff done?
You tell me what works best.
Okay. So for me, if I'm working in a team and collaborating, I really think communication is really important, but I also understand that everyone has a little bit of a different work style and planning style. So I would say, I would suggest a couple meeting times early in a week and say, hey, can we meet from this block, or this block, where we can actually just get together? Super quick, hyper focused huddle. This is not a long, drawn out meeting. It's not probably a long planning meeting. Most likely an on your feet sort of, 15, 20-minute huddle where we can just get the broad brushstrokes down, and then we can move in accomplishing the tasks. If we can do a midweek check-in, that would be great. It doesn't have to be anything significant. If we're in the same building, around the water cooler or coffee pot would be ideal. If we're in different locales, Zoom, so we can still see each other, would be great. And then an end of the week checkup, basically a little bit more substantial. Maybe we block out 30 minutes where we start by getting a quick, lightning round overview. Hey, this is what I accomplished. This is the progress that I made. And then we can spend the rest of the time figuring out how do we, close out the milestone, or how do we plan the next steps for the next week. I think that's how I would weave in a team approach.
Okay. And this could be individual or part of that team. What if you get to the end of the week and you haven't achieved what you'd hoped you'd achieve? What would you do then?
So I know you said it could be individual or as a team. Are you looking at if the team collectively hasn't achieved the goal, or if just me personally, I let the team down?
So either or, it could be individual or it could be the team.
Okay.
I'll give you an option to
I
choose.
think for this role, I think perspective on how I would handle each would be relevant. So I'm going to say if we got to the end of the week and the team didn't achieve its goal, I think the first thing to understand is not to look into, who didn't do what. It's to say, hey, what actually happened? How far from goal are we? And is there something that we can do to sort of salvage it and still hit the goal? So not focus really on the blame piece, but like, hey, what can we do right now to get us there? And that's irrelevant of who might have been the person that didn't hit their milestones. Some people, things come up, it happens. If we can salvage it and hit it, great. If we got to share work and pick up each other's slack to get across the finish line, I think that's ideal. If we realize, hey, this just can't be accomplished this week for this reason or that's this other reason, then we would just look and say, hey, can we bleed this into next week? And what would be the worst case scenario if we pushed our deadline back to next Tuesday or Wednesday, in my opinion. Now, if it was me, if we showed up to this meeting and there was two other people and they crushed their part of it and I just let my team down, I would just own it. I would just say, hey, I want to let you know that we as a team, we didn't hit our milestone and it's squarely on me. I didn't actually do the things that I needed to do. I don't want to make excuses. There were some things that came up which deprioritized this. Those are choices that I made. I'm going to own the consequences, and this is what I'm going to do to correct the issue. And I would offer up either trying to extend the deadline, like I just mentioned in the group thought, or saying, hey, is there a way that we can share in this work? Because I feel like if we just each do a little bit of this piece, we can get over the finish line, and then I'll learn and get better next time so I can better plan, better prioritize so this doesn't happen again for our team. And I think that's how I would handle the group approach, and if it was me individually that let the team down.
I like the fact that you're willing to put your hands up and to acknowledge the fact that it was you, but also that you were also then willing to take the responsibility for the consequences. So depending on what that is as to how bad, but then the priority would have been different in that sense. Now, from prioritizing tasks, you talked about the 60/40, so having that 40% gap in there. What would you do if one day 80% of your tasks, just like a recruiter, is reactive? So you've left 40%, but actually you've ended up with 80% of your day being taken up from reactive. How would you handle that?
That's a really good question. So for me, if I realize that there's just a reactionary component, life is happening like it tends to happen at a recruiter desk level, and it's throwing me off, I'm going to try to just take inventory. I'm still going to focus on the Pomodoro technique because I find that for my personal style, if I can eliminate distractions and focus on a task and be really good at it, I can help get through stuff quicker and more efficiently. So I would focus on that. And then really every time I was taking a Pomodoro break in between, I would just try to take stock about where I'm at with all of my priorities with that day to see if I need to put something that needs to get done that day in between, and then revisit those tasks that are just coming up if I've got that luxury, or if there's something that I can actually say, hey, I wanted to get this done today, but it's not as urgent as this other stuff that's just popped up. Let me put it on tomorrow's planner to make time for the urgent stuff that's popped up so I can actually get through it, be done with it, and not mentally take it home with me so I can show up tomorrow fresh and ready to attack the day. I think that's how I would really work through the urgent stuff that pops up.
Okay. And we know in recruitment that always happens. So, as a final question, then on our planning, just to make sure that this is actually the reality that you live in, talk me through one of your biggest projects that you've had to plan. What were the key elements of it, and why are you proud of it?
Mm, that
I
is a
know there's three questions in there, but I know you can handle it.
I know you said one, you threw three. It was like a Trojan horse thing there, but we can do this, right? So, the biggest project that I've had to plan was actually a large recruitment event for a company that was actually relocating to an area. And they had a core staff that they were bringing with them that was going to be sort of their local HQ operation. However, they had to fill out the teams of those leaders and then actually some production level teams. So two tiers of people or workers that were coming into this organization in multiple departments. And it was interesting because we actually had to, do it on a certain timeline because the people that were going to be reporting to the executives needed to be hired first, needed to be trained, brought up to speed, and be involved with recruiting that second tier production level type workers in this So that took a little bit of training, communication, and we actually, in addition to doing regular recruitment, marketing and recruitment pipelining to bring all of our talent to the recruiters that were working on this account that I was managing. We also had to coordinate public events, job fairs, career fairs, things like that for the mass hiring that we were going to be doing. And we had to do all of this to get everyone to a kickoff event to have the place fully staffed, actually not fully staffed, 92% staffed by the go live date that they were going to be announcing the facility opening and production running and all of that. That was a really large project that I was put as the champion on to plan. And the big thing I had to do is I had to get buy-in from the stakeholders at the event, make sure that we understood our timeline. We knew what was negotiable. We knew which timelines we had flexibility with. And then from there, we just filled in the roles. We structured the campaigns. We knew how many, we knew our pipeline metrics. So we knew how many interviews and all stuff and like ads we had to post to get to our desired candidate submissions to our people. So we were able to backwards plan that in there to hit timelines. And then we had to plan all the events, and the team hit it. They did a really nice job. So that's probably one of the biggest events that we had to do that was sort of on a kind of a weird deadline time frame there.
It's a really good example actually of by getting evidence of what you've actually done, but it's that probing question. So some of the key questions, I'm not necessarily looking for you to answer these now, but what I would
Yeah, no,
want to
so
follow
I
up
role
on.
play. So analyze me. Teach
Yeah,
teach the
no, so
audience what you just learned.
exactly. So there was a lot of we language in that last one. And you did mention that you were a team and that you were responsible for it. So I'd really want to know at what point, at what stage were you brought into the team? In other words, were you right at the beginning and were you directing it all? Or actually, did you come halfway through, pick it up, move it on? So I'd want to know that. I'd want to know how many was in that team. How many were you directly responsible for? How many were you actually guiding or that were parts that you had maybe a dotted line reaction to? What was the time frame? So is this something, it sounded really grand, but actually it was a company of 10. I don't know the numbers because I did a very similar project, oh god, 20 odd years ago, but we had to find 1,000 people and we had 4 weeks to do it. And my team of 10 were able to do that in very similar things that you were talking about there. And I was picturing that, but I don't know. I did not, we didn't get to the details. So that's where those probing questions, it's not accepting this wonderful answer that sounds fabulous, but actually when you dig in the detail, you might have come in 2 weeks from the end, responsible for the last bit, getting it over the line. There was maybe 10 or 15 things to do, people to recruit in all of these teams that you were talking about. And you had a team of 10 that was doing it. And actually the involvement maybe was 5 hours that you did. Who knows? But that's the difference, isn't it? That you could tell a wonderful story, but without asking those probing questions and actually getting to the evidence as to what it meant. And again, it's all about the non-verbal saying because people can lie and we know that. So
Yeah.
by asking quite a few questions, it's about how comfortable are, and you were very comfortable asking all that, and it was very flow. And from my point of view, yes, at this point I was believing you. It would be when I asked those specific questions that I would really hone in and look at what's the body language doing. Are you comfortable answering these questions, or all of a sudden this story that you've been telling for quite a while that sounds amazing has suddenly got some holes in it, and are you uncomfortable about that because actually it's not as good as it sounds? Does that answer your questions?
I love that. I love that. And so now I have to ask you, because you're the expert at this, how do you teach recruiters how to do this? Because there was two things that you were doing in real time, and I got to applaud you. I mean, you were fantastic just jumping in. Like you didn't know I
Wasn't my
was going to do
best.
that. I didn't know I was going to do that. It was fun, but I observed you doing two distinct things while you were doing it. One, technically three, but you were actively listening so you could actually ask the next great question, right? There would be that probing question to find out about it. But in addition to that, you weren't just listening to the answer to create the content of my skill set or experience or aptitude. You were also listening for the I or the we or some of the intangible stuff, the mentality type stuff. How do you teach a recruiter to be able to interview like that or plan to interview like that for their candidates at a production level that is often involved in a recruiting desk?
Yeah, I mean these are things that can be taught. Obviously, I was taught along the way. I think one of the critical things as a recruiter, you have to be inquisitive. Now we call them nosy Parkers, but having that inquisitive brain, wanting to know more, wanting to understand the nuances that go with it, that's the key. So if you're not bothered about people and you're not interested in their stories, then yeah, you probably won't make a great recruiter. So let's start with that. The second part is then actually giving them examples of good and bad interviewing and getting them to analyze it. So it might be that I'm going to use this now in some of my training. I'll take a bit of the video to see how we're doing that. But it's usually easier to spot the bad interviews. And I will put the link to this because it's one of my favorite interviews. It's so cringeworthy. Um,
I
one of
love
the
it.
best interviewers ever, and he had a show for 40 odd years here, is a guy called Marco Parkinson. So Parkinson was the show, and he interviewed Meg Ryan after her film In the Cut came out. And it's the most cringeworthy interview you have ever seen. He was renowned as this amazing interviewer, but actually, when you break it down, to start with, he didn't build rapport in any way, shape, or form, and he sort of negated her right from the beginning. Her body language is fascinating to watch. She's really trying to cut him off. She does answer every single one of his questions, but he asks such bad questions because he's
Ah,
always usually getting away with it because people will play the game. She didn't. So it's about 10 minutes, 13 minutes of just pure pain for him, and she starts to quite enjoy it, and it gets worse and worse. And finally at the end he says, well, look, if you were me and it was going this badly, what would be your advice to me? She said, I'd just stop it now, to be honest. Just finish it. And he was like, oh no, I wasn't expecting that. So
oh,
she
Meg.
she cuts him dead. But I've used that in interview training before, getting them to actually look at the non-verbals, what's going on around it, how is he either trying to build rapport or not build rapport, what type of questions did he use, the open, the close, the probing, all of those. And we find out so much about it by actually doing the analysis, and it's a real eye-opener for people. So yeah, go and watch that video from an interviewer point of view, see what he's doing, and yeah, don't do that.
I love it. So if you send me that link, we're going to get it on page right here, and everyone can enjoy in our misery of watching this uncomfortable interview together. I love it. So I want to, man, there's so much. I don't, I know we said at the top of this that we were going to do recruiting and sales. There's so much deeper I want to go in recruiting. So I'm going to extend a quick invite. Can I invite you back for an issue in a few months
Yeah,
to just focus on the sales side? Because there's so much in recruiting that, like, man, like you're amazing. So I want to get this out. Do you
you're such a flatterer.
I try. I try.
Go
I
ahead.
just
No, I'd love to come back. BD is critical here at the moment in the UK. I've just been speaking this morning to Charles Cameron of the RCSA in Australia and New Zealand. That's really critical there as well because we haven't got those skills. So we definitely need probably a whole one just on the business development elements as well. But yeah, the recruiting is really important.
I agree. So I'll have you back for the BD, but here's the recruitment side. In when you're working with recruitment agencies and staffing agencies and they're hiring recruiters, do you prefer to hire green people without any experience in the industry, or do you prefer to hire people that are experienced in recruiting?
Well, my team, I always went with the non-recruiters because I loved training. So it was always in my blood. So therefore I wanted to develop them, but that was a conscious hire. That I wanted sales. I wanted people that had experienced some pain in being rejected. I wanted them to appreciate because recruitment is a sales job. You're constantly selling, whether it's
All the time.
yourself, whether it's to the client, to the candidate, it doesn't matter. So if you've got that ability to be able to get a message across in a positive and polite way and to understand people's needs, then yeah, you're probably halfway there and we can train you on the rest. I did recruit one recruitment consultant who had a couple of years experience, but there was still lots there that actually when I spent more time needed to go back to basics sometimes. And yeah, they're still in the recruitment industry. I'm still in contact with them now. They're amazing. And a lot of my team 20 years later we're still in contact with because yeah, they were brilliant people for the industry. So that barrier to hire that we talked about at the beginning, making sure that you are not sugarcoating the job because they're only going to fail. So realizing, and I will give you a link. I wrote a few years ago you become a recruitment consultant. What does that really mean? And it's a 13-part series taking you through your first 13 weeks. And
Wow.
we do tend to find that the first 3 days, the first 3 weeks, the first 3 months is when people go, oh, what have I done? 3 days is, what is this? This isn't
Yeah.
what I was expecting. I thought I was just going to sit on the phone and talk to people and it would all be lovely. Yeah, no, there's a lot of work to this. 3 weeks where they suddenly realize, am I ever going to get hold of this? And 3 months is where they decide, well, okay, I get it. They're probably not great at it at this point. I think it takes 6 months for a new recruiter to really get good at what they're doing. But they're making that decision, do I want to carry on doing this? Because actually, yeah, it is quite hard work, but there's such great rewards. Again, why I'm still in the industry this many years later. I love it. I love the people. We are lovely people that really want to help. So if that's not you and you're not a nice person that really wants to help people, then yeah, we could probably do without you in our industry anyway.
I agree. Amen to that. So two follow-up questions. So one, you mentioned that you prefer the green because you are a trainer at heart, which is great. So I'm guessing if someone's not really a training centric leader in their organization, maybe look towards people that have experience or outsource, like bring in experts to help with the training side of it. So,
That
but
would be us.
exactly right. Recruiting, Jim, exactly right. People just like
Yeah.
you that love it and can convey it really well, obviously. But
We've created 26 courses for a recruiter's first year. So there's four main ones that tackle the 360 and any other element that goes with it. But yeah, the resources are out there. You don't have to do all the work for yourself. And certainly a lot, well, I don't know if it's the same with yourself, but in the UK, like 93% of the companies are 10 people and less. You do
yeah,
not have time to be training new
yeah,
people when they come in. When you've got a small company, you need a dedicated person to do that, or the whole team helps. If the whole team helps, so we've got an onboarding course that people can take that help them to get the whole team involved, then yeah, you're sharing the load. It's a lot easier. But you have to be committed to developing that person, even if they're experienced, because you want them to understand your business and to be able to actually promote your business in a positive light. You've got to take time and effort to do that.
yeah. No, I agree. I completely agree, and it's one of the most important things that agencies can actually do is train and develop their people because you don't grow your company without growing your people. So,
Mm.
but back to where you would find people, because if you're a recruiter, you're always on guard. You're always on alert looking for talent. So those people that might have some sales experience, they might have experienced some rejection, some pain. What industries, if any, like have you found like maybe one or two industries that good recruiters really come out of that you with from your experience?
Yeah, we had this conversation today actually. So the top two from my experience are estate agency or real estate agency, I think you call it there, and also advertising sales. So for
Really?
some, yeah, people that I've come across from there, there's so many consultants that are really good. And when I ask them what they did, they come from advertising sales because that's a hard slog. That is
Yeah.
a hard
Yeah,
slog.
a lot of rejection with
So they
advertising sales.
Exactly. The estate agency or the real estate, I think that's because you've got the two different people. You've got, again, we've got clients and candidates. We're trying to service two customers, and that's quite unusual. But in a estate agency, you do that. Not to the extent, there's not the sales extent, I would say, but certainly being that middle person and understanding the push and pull and trying to get everyone together. Those elements fit really well with recruitment. So from my point of view, yeah, that would be the top two I would look for to start with. The third one, though, is people within the sector. So that's, if I can, I always go for who are my candidates? Who is it that I love that I've worked with in the past, or who is it if we've got temporary or contract? Who is working for us at the moment that actually gets on really well with the team, knows their stuff, and is supportive of what we do, and therefore I can train them the recruitment side. The industry knowledge gives them the confidence to be able to do it quickly. We can all learn the industry and be a sort of subject matter expert over a period of time, but if they're already in it, the credibility is there. When they call the clients, they go, okay, you get it, you've been in it before, and therefore, yeah, I'll give you 5 minutes. I'm not going to say go away straight away.
Yeah. No, that's smart. I actually all the points you made, I really can see being underlying necessary characteristics of the recruiting job, like real estate agent being an intermediary. I never really
Mhm.
thought much about that dynamic, having experience managing both sides and the communication and the demands of each side and meeting the needs of each side. That is a real estate agent is really a good example of that one. Plus, they're also somebody that generally has to earn all of their commission. I don't know if it's the
Mhm.
same way in the UK as it is the States, but it's all commission based generally. So someone that has enough confidence to really go earn it, and they have to show up for both sides in order to earn their keep. So I think that that's definitely a great trait there. That makes a ton of sense, actually. I honestly hadn't thought about that one. That's really good advice.
There's a light bulb moment for you there, isn't there?
It really was. I'm sitting there like, wow, that's actually that's an industry that I hadn't really thought about. Hospitality people, actually bartenders and servers, I've seen actually do really well. I, for us, I think it's because especially bartenders, you got to be able to deal with all types. And you got to be able to think on your feet and move quick and basically be a lot of different people uh, to your audience. So I think that
Yeah.
sort of chameleon effect sort of helps out. But you also can like people that are in that role kind of detect BS pretty quickly. They're kind of
We
trained to see that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Uh,
we find they work really well as key account managers. So
yeah,
those people in that type of service industry where they are there to be there for you and what is it that you want. The communication is fantastic. They don't always necessarily work with the B2B sales, the business to business sales, but as a key account manager, looking after people, making sure people get what they need and everything, and
yeah,
maybe expanding the business that way. Yeah, good place to start, and then
yeah.
hopefully train them to develop further.
I agree. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the front end, and you offered up some amazing resources to kind of show the roadmap of training and development for a recruiter. Kind of one of the last questions I want to ask as we're winding down our time here is how do you let me think about how to phrase this the right way. So, uh, performance management is a thing. Like we all, we train these recruiters up, and then we get busy, and it's sort of like set it and forget it. And then people start to get complacent. They learn the way that they do things, and they just keep doing it. So how do you always keep developing your people? How do you pay attention to your existing recruiters, your people that have been there a year, 2, 3 years or longer, and know when they're in a rut and know when to step in and kind of teach them or train them to get to that next level? How do you identify that and train them?
Okay, so two things here. I'm going to share the thing that impacted me the most, that helped develop me and move me forwards, which is called the empowerment framework, a simple 4-box framework. I'll send the details with an example of it to you, but it's literally, you normally do it maybe 2 times in their first year. So at their probation appraisal, great opportunity for them to review what am I good at now? What can I be let go of that I can just get on with? So the 4 boxes are go. You just do that job, that's fine. You don't have to tell anyone. The second box is go, then let know. So, okay, you do it, but let us know what happened afterwards. Keep us updated so we can keep an eye on it and just keep a track of what's happening. So, just in case it does start going down the wrong track, I'm not quite happy to let you just get on with that at the moment. Third box is ask, then go. So in other words, please don't start that until you've checked with me first. So you're keeping an eye on them. But those 3 boxes set the boundaries, set the agreements as to what I can do and what I can't do. People feel comfortable knowing that that's fine. They've said, I can do that and I'll update them afterwards. Or no, I've got to check first. The final box is what they're not doing. So that no go box is what would you like to do in the future? Let's take the next 6 months, 12 months. Where can you see yourself going within the company? What would you like to get involved with? What do you think we haven't got that you've got a skill that you could be using and we're not using that at the moment? So it's a real open conversation to get them to be thinking about their future and what they need. And then it's the no-go box that you can focus on developing over the longer term. The others you're working on all the time anyway because they're doing that job. So you're monitoring that. And I'm a SL2 trainer. Ken Blanchard, the situational leadership. So from that, it's all about adapting your leadership style depending on what needs they are. So each task is in a different box. They're going to need a different support mechanism from you. So whether it's a lot more direction because they don't know quite what they're doing yet, or it's a lot more support and it's just telling them how well they're doing and giving them that push that they need sometimes. And sometimes they kick up the arse as well. It's the support where you just need to be on them to make
Yeah.
sure that it happens. Some people appreciate that, some don't. So by doing a combination of both those things, they feel supported, they feel clear, they know their expectations, they know what they can do, what they can't do, but they can also see the future and see what the potential is to move forward. So that empowerment framework for me, one of my best things. The second
Brilliant.
thing, the more experienced consultants, and you would do that in their appraisal every year, so it's always ongoing. But those experienced consultants, I want them taking control of their destiny. I want them telling me what they're going to achieve. So it's quarterly business planning to start with, where they set out their objectives for their quarter. They break it down for the month, by the week. So they know each week what they've got to achieve. That comes back to your planning that you said you knew what you had to do each week. So start from the quarter and work it back. Once they've done a couple of quarters and they've got some great data to work on, and they can work out their analysis for their ratios as to what they're good at, what they're not, where they could get better, and then they can do an annual plan from there. So then now they've got the whole year planned out. They know exactly what they want to achieve. They're telling their boss, this is my plan for this year. This is what I'm going to do. Here's my vision for my desk, what I want to achieve. And here are the objectives. There it's broken down by quarters, by months, and then they can work on it for the week. So they come to you and say, here we go, this is what I'm doing, this is what I've achieved, this is what I'm good at, this is where I need some support, can we get some development on that, can you do some coaching? Perfect, that's what I want as a manager. But you have to train them to be able to do that.
Wow. So I love that. I absolutely love that. That is, I feel like we could do a whole session on that at some point. So
I'm
when
training
they're
that
doing their
tomorrow, by the
planning,
way.
I bet you do. Yeah. I mean, that's probably like people are like, yo, Angela, teach me that. So when you're teaching your recruiters to plan like that, and you mentioned their objectives, how do you balance like the behavioral inputs, like the activities the work they have to do against like financial goals? Like how do you teach them to measure that?
Well, they have to correlate the two. What are the activities they're doing to get to that financial goal? And this is where I was saying they need that data to be able to identify for themselves. So things like average placement value or average timesheet value, how much do they need to get to that end goal? And normally in the first year, they'll be given their targets. So therefore, you have to sit with them and work it out. So whether it's, we call it a roll up or a roll down. So it might be you start with, well, here's the end target. This is how much you make on average per placement, and therefore you need this many placements, and this is how many months you've got, and you break it down and down and down. And okay, offers to placements, you're now getting 2 to 1 on those. So actually you need twice as many offers at the moment to get the right amount of placements, because you're getting half turned down. Now we're going to work on that, so that will get better and better, but at the moment we need to go with what your stats are. Then we go from how many jobs do you need to be able to get that offer? How many interviews do you need for each job? So all of this data that they have in their CRMs, if they're not using it to drive their plans, to drive what they've actually got to do to be able to achieve what they want. And one of my favorites is always to say, okay, you've said this is your target for the year. That's what you want to achieve. I now want to know, how much money do you want to make for the year? So what commission is you going to get from that? Because sometimes when they then work it out and they're like, well, that's not enough.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
Right.
I want to do this, I want to do that. Okay, so you've set your original target, but you're going to have to set a stretch goal now, because that's what you really want. So you've done a realistic one, that's fine. I'm happy to accept that, but I want you going for the one above it. And each time you look at that one, that's what's going to get you the revenue that you want, the commission that you need. So linking it back to what's important to them, and some it's money. But for me, it's always what you're going to buy with that money, because money sitting in a
Yeah.
bank doesn't really do much. So what's it going to be for? Get them thinking about that. And some people, it's not money. That's changed quite a bit in the last couple of decades. So it's more about achievement and recognition for some. Others, it is about having a purpose and doing a good job. So you need to establish their values linked to their goals so that they do actually motivate them and they don't turn them off. We need to make sure that people are enjoying what they do and feel a sense of good health and well-being that goes with it, because that's what's going to drive them on if they feel good about it.
I love that. And I teach on that with like vertical alignment to create that sort of alignment of the individual and what they're trying to achieve to meet their needs personally and professionally and how it supports the goals. And I think to bring it full circle with something we talked about at the top of the interview is people that feel like they're achieving something that's meaningful to their own life, whether it's materialistic or other, can generally take a better sense of pride in what they're doing because it's those things are kind of interconnected there. So and you did a great job. I was going to ask the follow-on question about how you would manage all that, which I think you did a great job covering that. So my last question, and then I've got the final closeout question for you. But the last question on the recruiting topic is, how do you roll up the organization, right? So if you do this, let's say you got an organization, a firm with 10 producers, 10 recruiters, and you go through this and you're managing those 10 people exactly like you just laid out. How do you set the organization's goals?
I mean, admittedly, I like to work with the owners or the directors first, and getting their vision for the business. I get them to get everyone included in that and work through a session so they've got that clear. But I want them to be thinking sort of 1, 2, 3 years ahead as to where that's going. And then once we've got that 1 year plan, we can ask the individuals to come back with their own individual 1 year plans. And then you look and see if they correlate. And most of the time they do. I can remember the first time I did it with my team, they came back and it was something like 3.5 million. I mean, this is 25 years ago. They came back with like £5,000 difference to what my goal was that I thought they were going to do compared to what 10 of them all came back with. And I couldn't believe it. And it was 5,000 more. So I was like, we're going with yours. That's fine.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah. So you need to know where they're coming from rather than just giving them a goal to start with. Get them to think about what could they achieve. And yeah, newbies, they're not going to know. You're going
Right.
to need to do that. But someone that's been in there a year will know next year this is where I want to be. So then you can correlate. And if they come back and they're confident and it's just slightly above yours, you let them go with it. And it just means you're going to overachieve on your target. That's fine. If it's way below, that's where you've got to have the longer discussions as to how they came up with that number, because sometimes again they just do that rather than working it out. And when you start working it out and looking at what's realistic, a lot of the time it ends up a lot more. I see this with companies where they say, right, our target next year is going to be this, and then when we work out, well, how many staff, what's the minimum you're expecting them to bring in, at what point you're bringing them in the year, and once it's all worked out, it's way more than they were looking for. So they have the option then. It's like, well, no, we were happy with the first number, so it just means we should be over, and let's not stress everyone. Or if they're really pushing, then they're like, nope, we're going to up it and we'll go with that. So it's getting that correlation and really getting them to see, and ideally then presenting it to them. Here's the plan. Here's where we're going over the next 3 years. Here's next year's. This is what you've all said you're going to do. This is all going to work. And now here's the quarters. And what's really important is that people get a quarterly update. So it links to their quarterly plans. You gather all the information, you then share it with them from a company point of view. This is what we said we were going to do this quarter. This is what we've achieved, and hopefully some incentives that go with it and a rah rah and everyone's happy. Here's the next quarter. Where's the challenges going to be? What do we think is going to be the toughest thing to achieve? Let's break out. Let's come up with some ideas. So everyone again gets to input into that. And it's ongoing. It's all the time. So every quarter, people know where they stand, if we're on track, if we're not track. I'm a big fan of Roger Dupree's 6 questions. I'll put a link into that as well, which was, he worked at Rank Xerox for about 20 years. And his analysis showed there are 6 questions that employees need their managers to answer for them. So this will be funny. Right. 1, what's my job? So have I got a job description? Do I know what I'm meant to be doing? 2, how am I doing? So this is about feedback. Am I getting feedback to tell me if I'm doing bad or if I'm doing good? And if I'm not getting any feedback, I don't know. 3, does anyone care? So is there some individuality and adjustments that are made? I'm an individual, not a number. 4 is where are we going? So what's the plan? And that's where, yeah, what is it that we're trying to achieve? 5, how's the unit doing? How's the team doing? Are we actually on track or not? And 6, how can I help? So empower me to be able to then support what we're going and what we're trying to achieve. Don't keep me separate from it. So if we can answer all of those 6 questions as a manager to your employees, and maybe just ask them to score you on how well you're doing on those 6 questions, and that will give you straight away something to focus on to make sure that you're going to get more engagement from your staff. And I think that for me is critical for 2023. Employee engagement. that they're happy, that they want to add those additional resources, whether it's time, whether it's brain power, to get the company to where it wants to be. And if you've got that, that's going to help you get through the next year or two.
It's amazing. That's amazing. I agree and love everything that you just shared. So thank you for that. And kind of our closeout question and is what is Recruiting Gym? Like, why did you start this? Like, what does it do? Like, tell the audience that's probably, hanging on your every word at this point, I would imagine, why you do what you do and what you do at Recruiting Gym.
Okay, so I didn't start Recruiting Gym. We're just coming up for our fourth anniversary. Alex Moyle started the Recruiting Gym because I am not a gym bunny. It's not necessarily my brand. But what I love about the Recruiting Gym is when you turn up to a gym, you can't just sit and watch. You probably
Yeah, they'll
get
throw
thrown
you
out.
out for that. I know.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing is going to happen just watching. You have to get involved. And that's what the Recruiting Gym's all about. So, whether it's online training, we've got over 100 online training courses now. We offer 6 free courses to all recruiters around the globe. So, we'll get you the links for those if people want to join up.
awesome.
There's over about 200 sessions now that are on there, sharing stuff like I've been speaking about today, to help people be better. So you can get some free training. We have Ask the Coach in there, which is free coaching as well. We have success stories where we've interviewed people that have set up businesses. So there's lots of sort of motivational stuff, mental health and well-being. There's loads in there as well if you're struggling. So that's the online side of the Recruiting Gym, and it's a community. There's over 2,000 members now over the last couple of years that have joined up. And I got involved, put one of my courses on, and got my leadership program with Alex together. And then the lockdown happened, and I ended up running the business
Mm.
during that summer when it was just constant 100% all online.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the year, Alex did say, "Well, look." You seem to be enjoying it a lot more than me. Do you want to buy it? Which I did. So that was coming up for 2 years
Congratulations.
ago. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? So I have had my other company for 20 years. It will be in February, which again is training and coaching, but I was doing that all over the world. We've been a little locked down for a while. So there's been
Yeah.
a lot of online stuff. We're back to 50-50, or it was 46-54, I think, at the last assessment, where we're face-to-face training again, as well as the online training. So people are back out there in classrooms. As I say, I'm doing that tomorrow. I've been talking about BD today out with consultants. So yeah, we like both of that. There's 10 of us in the gym. So there's 10 like me. We're all recruiters. I think the baby of the bunch is about 15 years experience. So that shows you we've got an amazing team, again, based all over the world, and they do the training. So whether that's online, face to face like Zoom, or whether it's physical in classrooms, coaches. So if you need executive coaching to support you as well as consultancy. So things like commission structures and plans, we help with that. So we call ourselves the home of recruitment training. Anything and everything that you need, we should be able to help you with. That's the plan. So we're just
I,
going onwards and upwards.
I would think so. If they've got 10 people like you there, they probably can do just that. This has been amazing. I really, like I said, coming into this, I was a little bit embarrassed to say that 2 months ago, I had never heard of you. And now I cannot be more grateful that we've met and connected and that you've shared everything that you just did with our Staffing Monthly audience. And definitely going to invite you back to have that conversation on business development because that's like my core passion. So I can't even imagine where that conversation is going to take us. But Angela, thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge and wisdom with this group and just helping make our industry better.
My pleasure. Really enjoyed it.